it's Lauren and welcome to another Whimsy Stamps tutorial video. Today I'm sharing with you how I created this fun slimline card using lots of new dies from Whimsy Stamps. I will be using the Slimline Cornered Rectangles die set, the Cutie Alphabet and Numbers dies, the Scallop 6A2 die, Scribbles background rubber cling stamp, and Mom's layered flowers clear stamps. I know that was a lot, but you can always reference my description down below in the video to see a list of everything that I have used. So I took that Scribbles background stamp and I'm going to be using some Distress Oxide colors in Vintage Photo and Walnut Stain and just creating a vignette kind of look onto my stamp. And then I have a piece of craft cardstock that I have cut using one of my Slimline Cornered Rectangles dies and applying that directly onto my stamp using a scrap of printer paper just to help apply pressure so I don't get ink all over my hands. I have my stamped scribbles, but I wanted to create a little bit more of a vignette look, so I'm going to bring back out my darker ink, which is Walnut Stain, and use a blender brush to put color all around the four sides of this rectangle. Once I'm happy with that distressing, I wanted to add some splatter using that same Walnut Stain. I'm smushing it against this piece of acetate plastic that I have, and I'm going to get out my distress spray to add some water to the ink. I have a brush, just any brush will do when you're splattering, depending on the kind of drops you want to get onto your background. I wanted larger drops, so I'm using a larger brush and just going to flick that right onto my background. I was having a little bit of trouble getting that color to really show up. I think it was just too close to the colors already on my background, but you will see there is some small activation of the water because I use a Distress Oxide ink for my stamp. So I just went ahead and just directly sprayed onto my background to get more of that splatter look just by activating that ink already on my cardstock. So now that I have my distressed and textured background, I'm going to work on stamping my florals. The Mom's Layered Flowers Clear stamp comes with just that, stamps to help you layer your flowers. There is the inside part, which is the solid part of our flower, and I'm going to be layering up using this pale pink color. It really has that ballerina pink feel to it. So I am inking this up 3 times because it is really pale and I wanted to make sure you could really see that pink. And I went ahead and stamped it twice thanks to the magic of our Misty. I am now just taking a foam dauber and adding in a darker pink just around the edges of the stamp. I wanted to create kind of an ombre look and give it a nice blend into that kind of ballet pink. So that way you can see there is a lighter bit on the inside and then it fades out to a darker color pink, just giving it a nice fade. And then now I'm going to work on the outline stamp. So I am lining these up with my stamped images and making sure that it stays on my paper, and then I pick it up with my Misty. I'm going to make sure everything's going to line up well, and then I am using my VersaFine Clair in Pinecone, which is a dark brown ink, and stamping that around my flowers. And here now I have 4 florals, and I have a pretty inside with my pinks and then a nice brown outline. So the nice thing about using VersaFine is it's friendly with watercolor, so I'm just grabbing my yellow Zig clearing color brush pen here and adding yellow to the center of my flowers. It's just really easy to add in that color. And I have already die cut this sentiment that says love you forever using my Cutie Alpha and my Cutie number die set. Next, we're going to work on getting those brown frames for our card. I used the new Scallop 6A2 die to get those frames. I'm going to save the rest of my pieces though because I can use them on a future card. My background is nice and dry, so I'm going to glue that to a slimline card base that I have already cut and scored. When it is folded, it is 3.5 by 8.5, and I use that largest of those die so it fits perfectly onto that card base, and I'm just gluing it down using a little piece of scrap paper to make sure I have a nice stuck piece of cardstock. It is a little tortured because we applied so much ink and water to it. Now our card looks a little funny with these 4 white corners, so I'm just going to grab some snips and trim them right off so that way our card base matches our Slimline die cut piece from that Cornered Rectangles die set. So now I've got all 4 corners snipped, my card base is ready to go, and we can start applying some of these elements to our card. We have our frames, and we have our flowers, and we have our green die cut letters and the number 4. And I'm going to just arrange everything onto my base as I think it will look very nice. I absolutely love that I can customize my own sentiment with this really adorable font for this die set. I have my sentiment lined up how I want it, so I'm just using some low tack tape to pick up my sentiment off of my card base, and I'm going to set that aside because I will just add some glue behind all those letters and adhere that down when I'm ready. So I'm going to use 3 of these frames, but I wanted them to kind of pop up a bit off of my card. So even though I have 6 frames, I'm going to double them up to add a little bit of thickness. So I'm just adding some wet glue behind one of the frames, and then I will add a second one behind it. And that will just give a little bit of dimension without too much bulk onto my card base and my card design. So I'm going to repeat that for all 3 of my frames. Once they are doubled up, I'm going to apply that wet glue and glue it right onto my card base where I had it planned originally with my flowers kind of coming out of the frame. I thought it would look really fun just having these flowers pop up out of the card, kind of like, I'm imagining like a gallery wall, a really tall wall apparently, but instead of family pictures, we're gonna have these big bold flowers. So now I'm ready to apply my sentiment. So I put that wet glue on the back of my die cuts, and I'm gonna use my little helper here to make sure that I have pressed all of those letters down. I'm gonna leave that tape in place and wait until my glue dries so I don't risk pulling up any of those letters and having to glue it back down. To add a little more dimension, so those flowers are really popping up out of those frames, I'm just going to use some of my foam squares here and glue down my flowers. So I put that really nice bright one on the top there, and then I'm going to layer these other 3 on the bottom, again using foam adhesives. I've got large ones to place behind my small flowers, and then since that larger flower is kind of in between the 2 frames, I have some smaller foam squares that I will use to glue that flower down and not interfere with the frame, getting in the way of gluing it down. I would love to know in the comments what you think about the new Cutie alphabet and number dies. Are you in love with these sets as I am? I think that the font is adorable. I love that we have upper and lowercase, so it's a mix and match. You don't feel like you need to have an uppercase or a lowercase die set. I just think it's super fun and whimsical. I think it's a great addition to their already many amazing stamps and die sets to create your own sentiments, but I am so stoked to have this in my collection. So now I'm going to apply that last flower, and my card assembly is pretty much done when it comes to our paper. So I'm going to peel up my mint tape, and my sentiment is staying in place, so that is good news. I have some fun iridescent clear sequins and embellishments, and I am going to just use my jewel picker here and layer some of these sequins all around my card, and I'm going to use my wet glue to adhere those down. I want to add a little bit of more shine to my letters, so I am using some glossy accents on all of my die cut letters and my number. And then I have this really chunky clear glitter, and I'm just using my fingers to sprinkle it on like you would salting your food, just to add a little bit of glitter. I didn't want it to be overwhelming and take over the card or not be able to tell that it's a letter E because there's just so much glitter. So this is just a nice little touch of shine to my sentiment. And that is going to finish off this Slimline card. I hope you had some fun with me just playing around with these supplies and coming up with a really sweet card. You can find all of the items I used down below in the description of this video. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll click that like button. And if you're new here, I really hope you'll consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.